All right, I'm the chair, the moderator of the farmer panel, and we've got three farmers, Carl deConinck Smith, and we have Shayla Wourms, and we have Rob Stone. And my notes have introductions, but I'm not going to read those notes because they're going to introduce themselves. And we'll get that presentation started, and we'll invite Carl up.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I'd just like to thank the opportunity to give a little overview of our operation, the technology that we've implemented and use on our farms. You guys are the experts. We're the ones that use this stuff day to day and put a lot of hours on it, on our operations. Wait till it comes up here. Anyways, my name is Carl deConinck Smith. I farm with my wife, son, and my parents in west central Saskatchewan. We farm about an hour and a half west of here. We farm approximately 12,000 acres, of which 9,000 acres we typically seed and 3,000 acres of chem fallow. We grow a wide variety of crops, grains, oilseeds, and pulses. We farm in the brown soil zone, and because of this, drought is definitely always on our mind. We use this sometimes disadvantage and turn into an advantage and use our long season that's available to us at seeding and harvest to use our equipment over a very large acreage. Our precision ag focus on our farm is it's a plan really based around efficiency and time management. We do a lot of acres with one drill, so we use a 68-foot drill, and we're seeding on our own farm plus our neighbors 11,000 acres with that. So we're pushing the boundaries of what you can do with one machine. Also, it's the precise application of these nutrients and chemicals that we do apply. Example, the use of our spot spray technology. All of this tech helps with our profitability and our long-term economic stability on our operation. First piece of tech that we use is this triple chute Borgo air drill, large 1,300 bushel tank, and individual scaled tanks. We've previously used Seed Hawk 5 years. Basically all this is a Seed Hawk with mid-row banders. So it's just a slight evolution on a lot of technology that's currently available and out there. The scaled tanks, what they've allowed our farm to do, a couple of things. We've basically eliminated static calibrations, which can be a time-consuming operation when you're switching from seed to seed, different fertilizers. Also, the scale tanks allow us to seed a wide variety of crops, eliminating cleanouts. And at times on our farm, we'll even seed 2 different crops in the same day. We may seed lentils in the morning and canola in the evening. So we don't have time to do a lot of tank cleanouts, and all of this tech really helps us to make that very efficient. The most influential piece of equipment on our operation is this our 4045 John Deere high clearance sprayer. It's currently the only sprayer in the world that combines optical spot spray technology along with direct injection chemical. So we can, I could have Roundup, glyphosate, up to 800 liters on board that I can inject separately from what's coming out of my tank right into my line, which helps efficiency and can change those rates on the fly, various parts of the fields. From the cab, I can spray with 3 different modes. Full spot spray, which is visually detecting a weed and only spraying that weed. I can spray dual mode, which is putting a background rate, which may be a lesser or even a normal rate, as well as giving any weed that it sees a higher rate at the same time. So if there's a small weed that you may not see that you still want to get, that's when you'd start to use your dual mode. Also can spray full coverage, just like any ordinary sprayer, all using PWM, pulse width modulation, and turn compensation. Why do we use a system like this? It really is all about accuracy, being able to use in a cost-effective matter, getting more chemical and groups on our plants. A lot of times we're trying to find how much the least amount of chemical that we can use. Well, with a system like this, you can use, for example, someone might spray a whole field with a half a liter of glyphosate. With a system like this, I could use on average a 1/4 liter of glyphosate, but on each particular plant, I could get up to a liter to a liter and a 1/4. Of course, depending exactly how many plants are there. This is green on brown technology. Typical savings that we'll find in our burn-off fall spray is ranging anywhere from 90 to 30%, all depending on how many weeds are present in the field at the time. These systems are not fix-all system. They're a tool. They're a tool to maintain an already sound management weed system on your field. If your field is littered with weeds already, you've got to fix that first, because there's too many weeds to detect from one to the other. So you've got to fix it first, use these systems to maintain what you're already doing. And from all the years of using this technology, the number one rule that I've sort of came up with or use is that you don't use it on every field. So it's really knowing when to use the system and when not to use the system. What's our motivation? Kind of said this before, it might sound a bit of a broken record, but it really is efficiency and time. And it's efficiency of using those nutrients and chemicals that we do actually apply to the weeds or to fertilizer in the soil that we actually need to use. It's real-time variable rate application of chemical. We don't need to map our weeds. We're actually getting what we want on the weeds, however many actives, in real time. Now, there are certain weeds that do need to be mapped. So that's, it's understanding. An example, maybe wild oats might need to be mapped because they can be persistent in, a particular area, and you might need a residual. So there are variations, and that's just knowing when to use certain tools and when not to. All this tech, it's all adds up to helping with our profitability, which comes down to that lowering costs and helping with that fighting future weed resistance over the long term. What's next? Well, our push is definitely getting more autonomy on our operation. This is an example here of what's on our farm now. It's just arrived this past summer. So we've got 30-foot Seedmaster seeder, as well with 100 to 120-foot spreader that can all be run autonomously. Our big reason for this is so we can do more acres with basically the same type of labor, or the same amount of labor. And what this can lead to is changing the relationship of certain types of equipment to labor. it's a lot different operator that can run a large drill with a big tank on hills as opposed to an autonomous unit that once set up is essentially controlled from a computer screen. So you can, there are two different operators, and hopefully in the future that brings different excitement from different levels of people that are interested in farming. And I think that's all I have for now, so interesting discussion later. Thank you.
Hello everyone, so my name is Shayla Wourms. We farm in northwestern Saskatchewan, so we actually have multiple locations. So we're at St. Walburg, Turtleford, and Makwa, so we deal with a lot of diversity. We have black and some gray in terms of a soil zone. As you can see, the laundry list of soil types up here. We deal with a lot of variety in terms of our topography as well. So we have gentle rolling to extreme hills at about actually a 23% grade. We have significant rock, so we're talking major rock below the surface that could really ruin a lot of headers and drills, and then as well as dealing with bluffs and sloughs. Our primary crops are canola, oats, wheat, barley, and then limited pulses as well, so primarily small grains. And common challenges are just that we actually deal with pretty excessive moisture, particularly in Makwa, which is towards Meadow Lake. And then just the fact that we're about 100 kilometers apart from the field. So that's ranging from St. Walburg to Turtleford to Makwa. So we cover a ton of ground, which means a lot of variety as well. And we deal with, within that, a lot of managing of going around oil wells, which has kind of a bunch of challenges that pose in itself with the weeds and just number of turns that are needed with those, and kind of rocks off berms. We deal with erosion and drainage. Those are always top of mind as well. So we have about 6,000 acres that was pasture and hayland 6 years ago. So I again farm with my husband and his family. So they actually had Black Angus cattle previously, and we've converted everything to grain producing land because that's we didn't want to be livestock farmers for a variety of reasons. So in terms of what precision agriculture means for us, it's like Carl had said. So it's about efficiency and effective use of resources. No one wants to spend more time than they have to, and no one wants to spend more money than they have to. And then also just that economic and environmental sustainability, which is kind of the themes of today. So as you can see, I included some pictures from this past year at harvest. The first one with our New Holland combine there really represents the hills that we're dealing with. So I don't know if the picture really does it justice, but we deal with a ton of hills. So contouring is very important for headers. It's also a big deal when it comes to the drill that we are running. So that's a big piece of what we do. The middle picture is us kind of going between windrows this year on land that we had brushed, and then as well as the last picture being another representative of the hills that we typically deal with. So in terms of how we apply precision agriculture on our farm, we use an intelligent ag blockage monitor, which is very important for us, and an AirGuard dehumidifier. I think this is definitely an area where we'd be a little bit different than typically the southern farmers, because we are dealing with seeding through major moisture most of the times. We did experience drought in similarity to other southern farmers this past couple of years, but typically we're dealing with major moisture. So we use a disc drill. A kind of common misconception is that disc drills are not good for rock, but we find that it actually works incredibly well. So that is a big piece as to why we run a Borgo 3720. And we typically actually switch the setup with our drill. So our tank runs in the middle because we need a little bit more hitch weight to allow for us to get up hills when it comes to seeding. And it just allows for us to not have the risk of rolling. And another way that we apply precision agriculture on the farm is with a high clearance sprayer as well, with individual nozzle control. So that is a big piece. It also means paying attention to the fact that nozzles have to be upgraded. You need to be using the right nozzles. That's a kind of underplayed part as well. We have independent weather stations. So as I had mentioned, because we are dealing with large, kind of a diverse array of land, we need the weather to be very precisely forecasted for us. So we have weather stations at all 3 locations. As well as not to downplay the importance of just equipment and the mechanics of your equipment. So we run vertical knives on our headers. We straight cut all of our crops, so we find that makes a huge difference. It saves us, again, a lot of time. Our chopper is also very important. So we deal with a lot of residue management. That's a big part of our area. So we're dealing with large yielding crops. And so we need that chopper to be precise, and we need it to make sure that it is distributing that plant material properly. As well as actually a little bit different than most people when it comes to breaking land in general. Again, we have the rocks to deal with, so we've found that mapping kind of those deadhead rocks are very important. So that's how we typically use precision agriculture as well. So we're able to kind of provide like that pinpoint on each one of those rocks, so that when it comes to harvest, we have those deadheads flagged, so that we can weave around them, make sure we're lifting the header up manually at those points, just to make sure we're not going to crush a header or ruin the drill there. And our motivation to use these specific tools, again, is profit and efficiency. So that is a big part of everything that everyone does, but it's ultimately that we need to make sure that we're getting the most out of the land and constantly being innovative. So we're only as good as the tools that we're using in that way. So it's important to be constantly doing research and exercising critical thinking skills at all times to make sure that we are always pushing to be the best that we can be. So I think conferences like this allow us to really take in that information, learn from one another, and apply it to all of our individual farms. So very thankful for that opportunity. And in terms of what's next on our farm when it comes to precision, we believe it's important that we have grain loss cameras, so those being hooked up to our combines, autonomy, which is again a theme of today. So what we find is that we're probably a little bit further from the point where we can incorporate that autonomy, simply because we have just the land dynamics. So autonomous units obviously work very well on flat land, but when it comes to the extreme hill conditions that we're always having to deal with, it's going to be a while till that happens. We might have to start small and then scale up. So an example of that being we may get to a point sooner than later when it comes to being able to utilize grain cart, for example, on some fields. I'm not sure how long it will take us to switch over to entirely autonomous, but I know that the major issue of today is that is HR in general, so that can also help with that, and just kind of the user error when it comes to how we harvest our grain, and as well as smaller tools in the field. So things like planters just have that precise ability, and also playing to the conversations today around soil compaction. So that can really help with that as well, because it will allow us to just be very dialed in that way, especially because we deal a ton with that in our area being as wet as we are. We're very vulnerable to compaction, and we feel those detrimental effects all the time. as well as drone spraying. This is an exciting piece that we're trying to pay very close attention to, just because we again have that wet problem. So we need to make sure that we are utilizing again equipment that doesn't mean that we have to be on the field and running tires over the field with really heavy pieces of equipment. So drone spraying has a ton of potential. We've had helicopters in the past, but this has a lot of potential for our farm. Weed destroyers on the back of our combines. So again, that residue management piece cannot be talked about enough. We need to make sure that that is taken care of. But again, just the fact that our limiting factors are topography, obstacles, and ground conditions. For us in our kind of northern climate, dealing with recently broken land and recently switched over land, those are going to provide quite a challenge for us. And another actually hat that I wear is with Agriculture in the Classroom Canada. So I am very fortunate to be both a grain farmer and work for this organization full time. So I'm the Think Ag manager with AITCC, and what Think Ag means is it's our initiative for career exploration for youth. So I've had a lot of great conversations already today about it, and I think it's really exciting to position precision agriculture to students and Canadian students. It's definitely important that they understand that their skills, that their technology skills, and their kind of quick to question the status quo mindsets are going to make them very well positioned for some of the jobs that are coming in the next 2 to 5 years. And as well as just giving them opportunities to explore agriculture through interactive and hands-on experiences. That's really what we do with Ag in the Classroom, is allow them to attend various career events. We meet them right in the classroom. We provide them with various resources to be able to explore careers and really understand what their role is in agriculture. And so here's an example of our some of our resources. So this is actually a project that was funded by Emily and Pick, and we're very proud of the way this project came to be. An example of kind of how you play it is that a student is to understand this case study, read over the case study, and then they have to identify careers that are relevant to solving that case. And kind of all tangled up in the fact that they are also doing an interest area assessment so that they can understand some of how their interests specifically relate to these types of careers. So we try and integrate a lot of kind of that intrinsic mentality or intrinsic reflection with students as well. And just lastly, in terms of what precision practices tend to generate the most excitement among students, they really care about the why. So it's less about the what. So all the conversations happening today, they will get to that point, but what we first need to do is have them understand why is agriculture important. We need them to understand kind of that base knowledge of agriculture and what it's all about. And then we can highlight some of today's challenges and technologies that are helping to provide solutions already. And then that way we can get to a point where we're generating excitement for them in terms of how their specific skills relate to solving these problems. So happy to answer anyone's questions later on the panel. Thank you.
Hi everyone. So Rob Stone from Davidson, and I have the pleasure of being the last person, so I don't have to really say much about the technology on my farm. It's quite similar to the other two panelists as far as the variable rate and the seeding and all that sort of stuff. We farm about an hour from here at Davidson, which is right on Highway 11. If you've ever driven through, going to a football game in Regina, you've stopped at A&W or Dairy Queen and dodged cars at the Tim Hortons there. So that's kind of our claim to fame in the town of Davidson. Red button? Okay. Green? Okay. Let's see what happens here. There we go. Okay. So we're central Saskatchewan, dark brown soil zone. And yeah, we have some flat ground and we have some fairly rolling ground. I was interested in some of the discussion about about the tile drainage, both for some of our flatter stuff and for some of our pothole ground, to try and make better use of some of those things. We grow canola, red lentils, and wheat, but in the past we've also grown barley, peas, soybeans. We've tried grain, corn, pretty much a very adaptable area of the province where, in the past we've also probably done some mustard and other things as well. But for the most part, we found our jam with canola, red, lentils, and wheat, and worked those in a rotation where the red lentils are maybe a little bit less than a third of a rotation due to aphanomyces and other disease problems. Oops, that's too loud. Sorry, guys. What's up? Right there? Okay. So yeah, variability is the theme there. So that's a nice picture there of some combining in their grain cart. So we've got a lot of the simple stuff there that is as simple as driving the tractor straight, and we were really excited about those things. And as they talked about, the adoption of those technologies was very quick. But now we're definitely putting all of our platforms together to try and document and track and be able to better leverage all of the things we've got going on, whether it's the variable rate or the prescriptions that we're putting our fertilizer down at and all of those sorts of things, to try and pay attention to a lot of the pressures that are being put on the farm in a lot of the environmental things with emissions and those sorts of things. So section control, like with the other speakers, we have an 84-foot Whetter seed hawk drill, controls in 10-foot sections, shuts off, the shanks lift up and go in the ground. It's quite a great piece of technology, and it cut our overlap down when we started going with, this is kind of our second or third drill with some sectional capabilities, but the most comprehensive, probably about 8% over a solid seeding that we were doing before. So the variable rate's not just for fertilizer. We've been playing with variable rate both with granular chemistries like ethylfluoralin this fall, where we were selecting 3 rates with the applicator, and also with our spraying program with glufosinate and a few different other products to try and get the most precise rate. We're not as far along the road as Carl is with the see and spray and those sorts of things, but certainly looking at the opportunities that a lot of the tech in our equipment currently brings us. So we like to track our field efficiency as I spoke about earlier, and that's just kind of an overview of our farm, where the sprayer icon is the home base, and then that's our land base going north and south and east and west from there. We employ the use of crop intelligence sensors, and really enjoy the information that comes from them. What they don't do is make it rain, but they certainly tell you how much resource you have underneath your feet, and that makes decisions at times can be very easy. The last couple of years, obviously, we just didn't have enough rain. But when we do get enough moisture again and our soil starts to recharge, they're very valuable in helping make decisions on maybe top dressing or seeing trends over time of moisture use efficiency and other types of metrics that you can try and figure out how to increase your production. So obviously our motivation is efficiency, make the most of each acre because it's expensive to farm, and reducing environmental impact, either perceived or actual, because I think that there's a bit of both going on right now, where we do a really good job on the farm, and I think we need to do a better job of recording that, telling that story, and proving it. This past year, we had a robot cruising up and down in between the wheat rows, taking pictures of things, trying to identify weeds, and really just gathering data, looking at that as a platform for scouting and for providing more information on plant counts and insects, pests, all that sort of stuff. Very preliminary year for it. Basically think of a Roomba going up and down on a straight line and returning to its base to recharge every so often at the edge of the field. Solar powered, RTK driven. This is Solinfotech's technology. They're a Brazilian company that wanted to do some proving on our farm. This upcoming year we'll have an 8-meter see and spray type of sprayer produced by them that they'll be experimenting on a quarter section with that to try and gain some information about how they can apply that to agriculture in Saskatchewan. So thank you, and I really look forward to the best part of this is answering the questions and the interaction.
Okay, we've got, could I get 57 minutes? I think that'll put us to the right time. We're going to wrap up at 2:30, so we've got 57 minutes for good discussion. I did this poll ahead of time, so we're going to go through each of the 4 poll questions every 10 minutes or so. We'll get the 3 panelists to talk about their reactions to the results to the poll. And then I'm going to save 10 minutes at the end for a little bit of a discovery discussion. This is Canola Discovery Forum. What research do we need? And a last thought from each of the panelists, so you can think about your last thought. And for the Q&A, I don't want to wait to the end. So if you've got questions, Ian's going to be monitoring online and is going to give me a wave if something pops up there. There's a mic in the middle of the room right behind Ray Elliott, and we've also got some roving mics. So just, if I don't see you, because these lights are bright, just say, Jay, we've got a question from the audience. So let's, like I said, let's not wait to the end. Let's jump in and talk about what we're seeing, and we'll stay on top of the discussion as it happens. All right, I asked an audience poll, and some of you had a chance to answer. What precision practice provides the quickest return on investment? And there are 6 options, which hopefully you can see, but I'll read them. A is variable rate fertilizer, B is variable rate pesticides, C is optical spraying, D is sectional control, E is robotics, F is other. So hopefully there's not a lot of others, but if you say other and you want to jump up and tell me what your other was, that'd be good. So here is, can you 3 see this? Okay. Here's our answer, or the responses to the first question. So variable rate fertilizer was the number 1, and sectional control was not too far behind. I'm just going to pop back so you can see the question. So what precision practice provides the quickest return on investment? Number 1 is variable rate fertilizer. Number 2, right behind it, sectional control. Carl, what do you think?
I could definitely see that's always top of mind. Fertilizer is expensive. I want to be a little biased here. Optical spraying, I think, should be a little higher on our farm with investments that we've made. Right now, it's about a 50%, so it's a 2-year payback. When we first bought it 5 years ago, lower chemical costs, it was about a 3-year payback, but that's moved up now to about 2. So it's significant on a large farm. And sectional control, definitely. I think most people are using some form of that now.
Could I just jump in with a quick, can you give me a ballpark price on how much optical, the kit costs?
Yeah. So the ours is Weed It, which is an add-on, can be added on to almost all manufacturers. 120 feet, 290,000, that is the boom plus kit. So they're selling it as a package now, not just an add-on to your existing boom. It's a whole kit. And I think the John Deere See and Sprays, if you're going to order a new John Deere sprayer, I believe the add-on for that is roughly in that 100 to probably 130,000. So if you're ordering a new sprayer, based on what I know about spot spraying, it would seem like a no-brainer.
Shayla, what's your reaction?
I would say that what we talk a lot about is that sectional control for our farm would be a little bit higher, and I think that just simply comes down to VRT right now. Because we are new into grain production, we're just not finding that the data is useful enough yet. We just don't quite have enough. But I can definitely see the potential in that, and I can understand how many other farms see that ROI. And when it comes to sectional control, I am going to ask that you don't ask me specifics on this, because my husband could answer better, but I just know that what jumps out at us is that sectional control is an absolute no-brainer when it comes to our farm setup, because we're doing so much turning and again, like around leases and rocks and hills. So if we didn't have that, I really just don't even want to know what that would look like. So we find that is extremely beneficial.
Yeah, it makes sense for sure. What I see with that is that if you had to pick between variable rate fertilizer and sectional control, and you could only pick one, you pick sectional control, because that's the quickest, easiest, most inexpensive thing to implement. So don't overthink it. And then start spreading out from there. So because sectional control, the side effect of having that technology, typically you can get the script and put it into your controller. But if you can just have something shutting things off a few seconds earlier, or shutting off half the machine when you've got that last pass on a section, that whole mile, you're covering an extra 5 acres, 4 acres. It adds up quickly. And it adds up quickly in cost, and it adds up quickly too, because that's typically the same areas every time that you overlap with your sprayer, with your drill, with your fertilizer. And you do that time and time and time again. You're building hot spots. You're building spots that aren't. It just keeps duplicating a problem. So to me, section control is the easiest thing to justify, and then all of the stuff goes from there, because then you've got the tech integrated in your farm, and that's kind of how we started with it. Was knew that we wanted sectional control on as much stuff as soon as we could. The first sectional control on our sprayer was $2,000. It was an Outback little thing that you plugged into the switches on a 4700 John Deere in 2006. So it's been around a while, and it's I can't speak highly enough, because I paid it back in the first application.
First application, yeah, for that. Just on sectional control, it's another moving part. So are there maintenance issues with it that a person might not realize?
You've got more valves, you've got more wires, you've got more stuff, and Carl would know this as well as I do on the Seedhawk sectional control stuff. You have to be smarter than the machine, otherwise you have some gaps and triangles. So it's not perfect. So you have to bear those things in mind, but it's nothing that's nightmarishly unmanageable.
Yeah. Any other comments on that? Yeah.
What about automation? Like turning at end rows? Like I was just curious about the panel, if they've implemented some of the automation on end row turning to do that automatically, rather than having to turn everything on and off as you're coming to the end of rows.
No, not as yet. And a lot of equipment, all the technology is there. A lot of it isn't activated yet by a lot of farmers. Where we're getting into that now, of course, is autonomy. So that's the first thing now that noticing different, obviously, with autonomy, is it's doing everything. We're used to the sitting machine, doing everything for us except for those end turns, various operations like that. But yeah, now with this autonomy, it's actually they're actually pulling a lot out of this autonomy they're developing now and pushing it quickly into our equipment. I know Raven's pushing a lot of that into their new platforms. Like you're going to see more case sprayers turning automatically at the end. So that is coming faster now.
Yeah, so basically an automated unit, but you're sitting there, but you don't really need to be there. Ian, do you have one?
Yeah, we have a couple questions here. I'm going to combine two of them because they're very similar with these various technologies. Maybe we'll run through a couple of them here, the VR, the sectional control, or maybe the optical spraying. Is there like a minimum farm size or a minimum acres that really makes sense to invest in these? I know, Carl, you're talking the 2-year return on your farm. I'm just curious if you kind of run through if you're a 5,000 acre farm for this, or for the various techs, is there kind of a minimum farm size or minimum acres you think would make sense to do this, or what's the ROI difference?
Yeah, I'll just talk about just quick spot spray. Most of that tech, I've always made the comment of about 8,000 acres. That gets you to that 2 to 3 year payback. So then it's just a matter of you looking at your own operation and finding out how many opportunities you have to save, because that's really what spot spraying is about. Is it can shift from one year to the spring to fall. You might have more opportunities to save in one spring versus another, or one fall. So it's looking at your farm. How many opportunities do you have to go out, use a spot spray technology that will give you a payback? And
So that-
8,000 acres becomes.
So that was 8,000 acres sprayed in a year.
Yeah, 8,000 acres that you farm. So an 8,000 acre farm. That's what I equate to definitely a 2-year payback on just fall spray and spring burn off.
And I would just make the comment that when it comes to, I think, sectional control, I don't know what that kind of acre count looks like, but ultimately, if you're not having to do the extreme turns, you probably are going to be a slower adopter when it comes to that. But again, just starting small, starting somewhere, and if there are any kind of special maneuvers that you have to make, it probably pays off at even a couple thousand acres. Like, it doesn't have to be a massive amount. So yeah, just kind of taking into consideration like the layout of your fields.
I think that it's getting easier all the time to implement these things as add-ons, like Carl talked about. Ravens, implementing a lot of their autonomy focus into the turning and those sorts of things, but they've also got a lot of platform that can go over top of ground drive things, turn them into hydraulic, plug them into the monitor. So really, it's just a matter of figuring out if you're going to save 5 or 6% with your sectional, and you're going to do X amount of acres. You can math that one out fairly simply. Variable rate fertilizer, that's going to be tougher depending on your goals. But I don't think that it's an onerous amount of acres in order to have that happen. But I think that the spraying one would probably have a better answer for, you need this many acres to justify a $300,000 investment, but we're not talking about $300,000 investment with some of these other things. And as you get into some of the robotics and some of these smaller autonomous things, I think that the theory is that it's going to be a lot of units doing the work, so it's scalable, so it can go across a large section of acreages from quite small to quite large. And so I think that that's where there's going to be some benefits for all sizes of people in agriculture.
Ian, do you have another one?
Yeah. Anyone want to talk about farm experience on using drones to scout or map out fields, or the utilization of drones on top of the other technology we've already talked about?
I can start.
Yep.
I bought one to take a picture of my farm like 5 years ago or 6 years ago, and it was really fun, and we drove it around, and then I crashed it a couple times, and then I sold it to the neighbor because that was about all that I was able to do with that. Since then, we mapped every acre of our farm this fall for topography using Green Aerotech's technology. I haven't had a chance to see the maps yet, but it was a good fall for mapping because there was no water and there was no vegetation. So we will have basically maps of our entire farm elevation, so that we have a really good idea of where we've got some opportunities for water management and where we've got some opportunities for other things. So that's what we've used them for as it stands. Looking forward to the opportunities with fixed wing drones for spraying. It sounds like there's some companies that are pretty close to getting some really neat stuff going with see and spray. It's just going to be a matter of some of those PMRA things, and it sounds like they're starting to sort that out as well. So that's my drone experiences.
Yeah, I don't have any experience, but definitely it's on our radar, thinking of the potential uses coming up for them.
And we did use our drone a lot actually when mapping for kind of breaking land-wise. So anyone who's looking to do that helped a ton for taking pictures and just kind of navigating the setup of that and how we needed to work the fields so that was efficient and precise when it comes to how that was done. And then otherwise would agree, it's just kind of a nice everyday thing to have, a piece of technology at the tip of your fingertips whenever you need it. Even when it comes to, we did have cattle. We've recently sold them, all of them pretty much. But when we did, it was nice on days where you just needed to check out cattle as well. Like it's a really neat ability to, or a neat technology to use. And I would make the mention that it's very exciting for kids. So they really love that. When I was able to show a class of grade 4 a video of us getting a heifer back in with a drone, they thought that was pretty cool.
Good. Anybody want to ask one more question on that topic? Are we good? All right, let's move on. Question 2. Now, Carl, you'll like this one. This is Carl's question. So this is specifically about spot spray technology. The question is, what is the biggest barrier holding back spot spray technology? Reliability, return on investment, effectiveness, does it actually work? Waiting for green on green sensitivity, or E, it's a bad idea? Let's see what the answers are. Okay, so nobody said it was a bad idea, so there's a good thing. And you know, I guess you could say this is lots of support for all 4 of those options. Number 1 is waiting for green on green. But Carl, we'll start with you since this is your question. So you're seeing a return on investment in 2-ish years with the green on brown already. Yet the response is suggesting that more people are waiting for green on green. Do you want to address that one?
Yeah, like I try to talk to as many people about the technology as I can, and definitely green on green is definitely the buzzword. You know, that there's a lot of money investment going into that, and it is coming. You know, I don't think it's definitely not fully here yet for sure. I know John Deere's got their ultimate system. It's at the beginning phases in the States. You know, it will be a year or 2 at least probably before it gets here. I sort of go back to the low-hanging fruit. There's more opportunity certainly in the short term for us to save more money in our spring burn off, which is where we're having a lot of our resistance issues, or in the fall as well. So that's where our bulk of our savings is going to come from. I think what a lot of people don't understand about green on green, we may get there eventually that it's 100% accurate, but probably it's only going to be at best 75-80% accurate. So what happens is, in that very critical phase of our in-crop application where we don't have a second chance, as farmers, we may use the green on green technology for some of those first applications, like taking some grasses out of canola. That's easy. We're still going to come back 2 weeks later and give it the full application because we can't afford to miss any of those wild oats or anything that's hidden. So there's a gap there between, we all want to go see green on green. It's the holy grail of the spot spraying, but there's a whole lot of stuff that we can do and learn to trust before we get there. We got to walk before we run.
Anybody else want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about why we don't do that, and I don't know, because we should do that. So
on your farm, you should.
Yeah, we should do that because, you know, we have enough acres to do that, and we just haven't. And I think some of it is because when glyphosate was $4 a liter, and even when we were putting in a multiple mode of action with it and all of those sorts of things, our cost to go over the acres wasn't terrible, but the expenses are creeping in. And I'm probably as guilty as anybody saying, well, when it's perfected and when it's green on green and it has all the stuff, then I'll just go buy a new sprayer with it and not go through because we have done over time, we've done kind of the non-OEM add-on stuff, and you know, it's not as as cute, it's not as nice to use. So, you know, they're poor excuses, but that's certainly why we don't have one.
Go ahead.
Do you mind if I add just one
Yeah,
little thing?
of course.
That, like, you know, I've thought a lot about like these are the top answers that I got back from it was my poll that I kind of put on Twitter, actually asking farmers of why they're not adopting this technology, and sort of thinking it through all of those. Like, I mean, I can go through all those on my farm, and I've answered those. Like, I've answered the ROIs, I've answered the reliability. I've had 0 reliability issues in 5 years with the system. Does it work? I mean, I want to make a T-shirt that says "Chem Fallow doesn't lie." You can't fake Chem Fallow. It either works or it doesn't. So I know that the system, it works. What I've sort of come down to is just sort of a quick observation is imagination. It's almost a lack of imagination of thinking about these systems and how we can just use these tools and implement them with you know, all the chemical technology that you guys are developing. These tools can be used to really leverage that in different ways.
I know Joy, I'll get to you in a sec. The demographics of the audience here are about 5% farmers. This is online and in the room. 40 or so % researchers, and then lots of people from ag tech and farm inputs companies. If there are weeds researchers out there who might have a comment about using optical spraying and the right time, do we wait for green on green, or do we jump in now because there's real clear ROI and there's a good message when it comes to integrated weed management? Why don't you jump up and share some thoughts, Joy?
Sorry.
That one's being testy today.
Is it working now?
No. Oh, it might be now.
All right.
No.
No?
There you go.
Okay. I'm not a weed researcher. I'm not a weed researcher, but I am an innovation evaluation researcher. So I so appreciate the farmer perspective on optical spot spray and return on investment and reliability. I can comment from a research perspective that we have looked at the weeded technology for the past 3 years at Olds College and looked at very specifically reliability, accuracy, and ROI. And I can report that we looked at things like accuracy of the spraying. How large does the weed have to be before it triggers? Did it actually hit all of the weeds above a certain threshold? And did it have any impact on weed pressure throughout the growing season and ultimately yield? So we were looking at the spot spray setting, the bias setting, full spray setting, and can confidently share research data, replicated trials at field scale that showed a 96% chemical use reduction and no negative impact on yield. And we are just wrapping up the data analysis from the second year of trials, so we'll be able to have another year of data. But the one thing I'll share, and maybe I need to do that carefully in this room, but the most challenging weed at the pre-seed burn-off stage with that technology was volunteer canola. Because of the size of that weed at the pre-seed burn-off stage, it was too small for the see and spray system to see it and spray it. But we now have 2 years of data that show there is strong reliability, strong accuracy, and strong ROI for that technology.
Cool, thanks, Joy. Joy, seeing you reminds me that I wrote all these questions and headings ahead of time as precision agriculture, and I should have said smart agriculture, or precision/smart. Comment?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I like that. My first presentation there, that my number one rule of knowing when to use the system and when not to use the system leads right into sort of the answer to that. It's really understanding these technologies. So when you buy either See and Spray or you buy Weed It or any of the systems, is you need to understand what they're good at and what they're not. I'll give you an example. Weed It system, what it's good at, it's extremely good at seeing any weeds that grow in patches or anything with a broad leaf. What is it not good at? A newly emerged wild oat. Just you think of it just looking at it like a pinhead, right? So that's understanding as your season progresses from early seeding, mid to late, when you start to get those small wild oats that are coming up, if you want to hit that, maybe that's now when you transition more into a dual rate. So it really is understanding the systems and just knowing when and when not to use them. That just takes a little bit of experience, and that's what I'm trying to put out, I guess, into the sphere of farmers and dealers, is just of those type things.
We'll go to an online question. Ian,
You got
do
Steve.
you have another one in the room?
Hey,
Okay, go.
hey Jay.
Yeah.
I'm Steve Sherliff again, and our group is I'm originally a weed scientist, so we've done a lot. I've worked a lot with computer scientists on these image type problems. We've done a little bit of work with weed recognition, but not much. There's a lot of people working in the area using predominantly machine learning, and machine learning is great if you can train it with lots and lots and lots of images and lots of scenarios. But these networks are inherently very, very brittle in the fact that if there's anything outside of the normal, they have to have seen something similar to it before. So, if there's slightly different lighting conditions, and this is for the green on green system. So if there's slightly different lighting, anything different about what that weed looks like, if the weed's growing in a different environment, if there's been frost and suddenly it's maybe changed its color a little bit, but not completely died. All these things put it outside of that training data set. So you need huge training data sets. So the green on brown, I agree. That's just to kill weeds in a pre-burn off or in a fallow situation. That's like a mature technology that seems ready, that it's there. The green on green. John Deere has a sprayer that will do it in row crops, and from the Blue River technology, and we're going to see a lot of exciting things happen. But it's going to be, as the group has said there very wisely, it's going to be a slow progress, and there's going to be a lot of mistakes. Having a canola leaf that's over top of something else when you take a picture, it can't see through it. It's it's a tougher problem. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Steve, for that comment. Let's go to a question from online.
All right. Well, actually, just one thought on the green on green coming, especially in the canola world, thinking about it, with volunteer canola being one of the top 5 weeds we deal with canola crops. That's a tough one on the green on green world when your cotyledon volunteer canola looks exactly like your other ones. Another question here for Carl. Any use on using the green on brown on desiccation? So you have a brown crop, green weeds in there, or green other stuff. Any utility in that or experience?
Are people hearing this? Is it coming through? Okay. Carl?
Yes, for sure. I've done a small amount of that. So desiccating lentils, you wait till your proper timing when 60% of the field can be fairly ripe, smattering of weeds or greener areas in the hollows. So it's just a matter of, with these technologies, is just adjusting the sensitivity on the weed. It's really just using 1 to 3. 1 is most sensitive, 3 is least. For desiccating lentils, you'd use a 3, your least sensitive. So you'd use your dual rate. So you'd get maybe a slightly lower rate on everything that is ripe. It will still pick any of those areas that are green, larger weeds out at that 3. So then you can spray, full rate, 1.2 times, whatever your imagination comes up with, basically.
So so in that case, you're combining variable rate and optical.
That's right. It's real time. That's why. The whole reason why into these systems is I don't feel like I have time to map when the technology is already there that can do it in real time. It's there.
Anyone else out there? All right, we're going to move on to the next one, and Shayla, you're going to talk first about this one. Question 3, what is the best reason to use precision agriculture tools? A, to get more profit from each acre. B, to do more work with the same or less labor. To use the most modern tools to be more sustainable, environmental and economic. I think they're all good. So what do people think is the best reason? All right, so to use the most modern tools was 0. I guess that's probably not surprising. You just don't want to use tools for no reason. All right, so number 1 is to be more sustainable. Number 2, just shortly behind it, is to get more profit from each acre. Shayla, you agree?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. From the economic sustainability front, you heard it from all of us and the rest of the people speaking today that it does come down to economic sustainability, because if we don't have that, then we don't have an industry, but ultimately also environmentally, for a couple of reasons. I definitely at heart feel very passionate about the need to continue for future generations from an environmental standpoint, but it's also very important from a consumer standpoint. That's what, not that we're picking that answer because the consumers want it, it's because we want it as well. We want to continue for future generations, and then also that's very much what consumers are demanding, is that they want to see that environmental kickback, that what we're doing is environmentally conscious, and that is at the top of mind. But ultimately, what's exciting is the two are typically linked. So whatever is good for the environment, we like to think that it's also economically sustainable as well, and we're going to see a profit from upholding the environmental stability that way.
Yeah, exactly. Rob?
On my old Borgo 5710, I had a switch, and when you got to the end of the field, you shut it off, and then you turned around, and then you turned it back on again, and that was really easy, and I liked that. And a lot of days I would like that again, because that's the easiest way. You replace a fuse if the switch doesn't work, and then it works again. So we don't use these tools because they're, a lot of times they can be a bit of a nuisance, especially if you're training a different operator or those sorts of things. Dad would much prefer the switch. He doesn't drive the drill because there's a lot of stuff going on in there. So it has to return, and I agree that we're doing all of this stuff because the most popular answer answers the rest of them, is that we're we need an economic return for all of these things, and we definitely don't just do it for fun, but we can definitely see a need for it, and it is making us money. So it's a really nice way for it to work all the way through.
Is Christian Hansen still here? I think, Christian, you said this morning that auto steer was such a no-brainer that it was basically fully adopted. And I'm just wondering whether with John Deere sprayer sales, is that optical spraying option on everything, every new unit, because their economics are so obvious? So Christian, if you're there, let me know. But what do you think, Carl? Would you expect that optical spraying, given the return for you, is just going to be everywhere within the next 5 to 10 years?
It's probably just how things go. It's usually probably 5 years. They're just coming out. There's probably only 1 or 2 even for sale right now, even in Saskatchewan. There was one, we did have an opportunity. If we wanted a second unit, we could have bought one out of Rosetown, but that may have been the only one in Saskatchewan. So it isn't widely available yet, but it's coming as we get more of them spread out around the province and more people using them. I think the knowledge and how they work will spread.
Well, from the sustainability perspective, economically and environmentally, the fact that you can reduce your, pesticide use per acre by, I can't remember Joy's really big number, but 96?
Just put a quick number, napkin math. I just did, on 7,500 acres of burn off this year, it was $100,000. So you don't have to do a lot of math to understand there's big numbers now in this that honestly we're wasting an incredible pile of chemical over a lot of acres out there right now in certain seasons. This spring was one of them. A lot of people didn't either go out because there wasn't a lot there, or just did it because that's what we always do, sort of thing.
I guess I'd add in, and I kind of forgot about this point when you talk about volunteer canola and those sorts of things. We do rely quite, not heavily, but we do rely significantly on residuals. So that does change the math on that as well, because you're spraying where the weeds aren't. And so, for volunteer canola, any of the canola stubble, you want to have a residual down. And so you also have to consider the application of that and the timing of what other products you're applying as well. And obviously you can go with different rates and things like that, but that's the one point that I think some people would probably consider to be something that holds that math back a bit.
Yeah, good point, Rob. Shayla, anything else before we go to online?
Just would mention that I think with anything, it's all about just adoption rates and how easy it is. So I think as this spray technology gets just wider spread and people understand it and they see the ROI and there's just more education around it, it'll be like auto steers situation. And same with sectional control. We still have a lot of people that are not even utilizing that option. So I think just with anything, as soon as it's wider spread, it's going to be an automatic addition for people's operations that way.
Yeah, Ian.
So we talked a lot about technology you've adopted or you think would be good to adopt in the future. Is there any precision ag technology that you're skeptical of this point, either the ROI or the actual tech being able to really help you on your farm?
I think I'll jump in here. We talk a lot about, again, the autonomous entities, and it just being that not only for our farm, again, that is dealing with a lot of hills and that, but it's just it's that even though it eliminates user error, which can be a good thing, it also is not a good thing on the reverse. It's kind of a catch-22 that way. So if you're dealing with something, just that system override option, that will really have to be the case. So as we start kind of picking those up, it'll probably be more so an operator out there having to observe everything anyways. So I think it's going to be a little bit slower because it's kind of it's playing in the field of robots, and so people are a little bit less inclined to adopt those quickly because we're all human. So that's our trust that's kind of at stake. And so that would be, not that I'm skeptical, it's just it might take a while before everyone's ready.
Yeah, that's a great point, because that's really where we're at now with that technology. Is it's observed autonomy. It's not really let it go to the lake, let it do its thing. It's you still have to have someone somewhat close. We're trying to what I would like to do this year, running the OmniPower, is to you still have to have somebody there, but I would like to have a little bit of tether, so I want to have an extra screen that I can have in my sprayer. So I could have, the machine could be seeding 30 miles away with somebody that is physically there, obviously has to fill the drill, if it needs to be reset, is there, but myself as sort of the prime operator, I can actually run that machine once it's set in motion in the field. If it stops, I can turn it around. I can be anywhere I want in the sprayer, and I can do that. So there's that's the kind of the first stage of that little bit of tethering, I guess.
All right, we're going to go on to question 4. What is the most important trait for technology early adopters? This is a personality trait, so this is like the social sciences that we've just been itching to get into today, and we haven't had a chance, so here we go. What's the most important trait for technology early adopters? A, curiosity. B, financial resilience. C, computer technical data crunching skills. D, ability to delegate. E, a growth mindset. Anybody got a guess?
My answer's not on there.
Okay. Well, we'll get to your answer. All right. So the number 1 was growth mindset, followed by curiosity. And it's interesting. I forced some farmers to fill this in last night, and they weren't allowed to go for supper until they. Anyway, we had a bit of a discussion about these two. So this is pretty interesting. So a few of the farmers were feeling that curiosity was number 1, which I really love, because I like people who are curious. That's what makes the world get better. Rob, what's not on there?
Patience. You have to be able to exercise a great degree of patience both for the mental well-being of the people around you and yourself when you're implementing a new process. And because regardless of what you do, there's going to be a great learning curve, and there's also going to be a significant time of questioning whether you're doing the right thing, whether the time is worth it, in order to accomplish those other things, because you want your curiosity satisfied, but you do question yourself at times.
No, that's really good. I like that. So just on that note, Rob, I grew up on a farm, and we tried lentils once, and it was so bad we gave up. This is
Good.
And but I don't think my dad exhibited the level of patience required when you're trying a new crop. Anyway, so how many years before you give up on a practice or tweak it or do something entirely different?
I don't think that there's a standard operating procedure for that. Just if something shows promise and you're able to make some incremental gains, then you'll revisit it. And some stuff will get buried fairly early, I would think, in the process, and maybe revisited when the time is right. But everyone's got a different aptitude and also a degree of stubbornness to just say we're gonna make this work, damn it, and that's just the way it is. So there's really
that's
nothing.
Not confirmation bias, is it? Like
No, it's just like they said it'll work. We're going to find out how we can make it work. So yeah, exactly. But yeah, or it could be confirmation bias. Yes.
Shayla, what do you think? What do the kids say, or what do you think?
Yeah, I would add that it kind of plays into not only just this conversation about technology, but just farming and farm management in general. That it is about definitely patience, willingness, like asking questions. It's also just management of logistics. Like even what Carl was talking about, that if you're an operator and an owner and you're in one system trying to then monitor something else, you have to have your mind going a bunch of different directions with also still like your ultimate priorities in mind, and that takes a lot, and that's why farming isn't maybe the easy profession that a lot of people think it is outside of agriculture. So I would just add that that's then also kind of replicated when it comes to how we talk about this with students as well, is that if they're people who want to find solutions, and I like to think of it as solution finding instead of problem solving, because if their drive is to find that ultimate solution, they're going to make great technology advocates, whether they're on farm or servicing farmers. So I think it just comes down to, and maybe that's what growth mindset is ultimately, like it's the package, and that ultimately makes growth mindset.
Carl, do you want to add?
It's kind of another answer that's not there. Is that kind of alluded to this before? It's that imagination process, just putting all of these pieces, all this tech that's there, and just placing it on your farm and see how it can all work together. Like with this dot machine and our original old seeder, it's just finding the what they're each good at. So maybe the OmniPower might be better at seeding canola, so I'm hoping to do slightly more canola, less compaction, not a big tank behind there. So it's just finding those niches and thinking through all of those processes, where we can make this stuff fit into our industry.
One of the people I'm talking to this year for the Canola Digest panel is Josh Height, who farms more or less in your neck of the woods, Carl. And I don't know whether you've curled against him or not. Have you ever beat him? Have you beat him?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, good. Anyway, he talked about, because I asked this question for the January Canola Digest, so this is a sneak preview. And he talked about the importance of hiring someone to help you through some of these technical challenges when it comes to applying new data or new technology. Carl, all three of you, have you ever hired someone to help walk you through how these things might work?
I haven't. I think it just comes from a love of wanting to do this stuff and reading and seeing what just on Twitter what like Rob and Shayla do, industry does, and just learning from all those bits and pieces. is kind of where I would gain, I guess, a lot of my knowledge from.
Shayla,
Yeah.
there's lots of young, smart people coming into the system, hopefully. Maybe
Yeah,
you could hire them.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough thing again that everyone's experiencing right now is just a little bit of these HR challenges. So when it comes to on-farm, hard to get that talent because it's sometimes difficult to recruit people to come to rural areas, or lots of times again it's high school students that see some other big fancy job that they don't necessarily want to come back to a farm. But I think it is what Carl said. It's everyone sharing knowledge. Twitter's really important for that. I know my husband Nick's on there constantly. It's like the peer group mentality as well. So I think if we all are wanting to work together, and we're going to get a lot of value out of collaboration, and that if people are willing to share the technologies that work on their farms, it can save us all money because people just will willingly share, and everyone will benefit from it. Not to say that we can't hire people who are trained in the specific areas, but we're living in a pretty fast-paced world, so sometimes that the trained people almost can't keep up with the changes in technology. So it's important that we all just are constantly sharing that new information.
Something that I left out of my introduction was how we accomplish some of these goals with variable rate and things on the farm. So we hire an agronomist that does all of the analytics for coming up with the zones and does the soil testing, and also does all our crop scouting as well. So we work very closely with a single independent agronomist, and who also happens to have some really good background and experience in the John Deere world of tech. So he's really good on the 2630s and not as much on the GS4s because he's been out of them for a few years, but he's really good at helping us with that. So I could see where if a person is deficient in those things, that's a great it's a great growth business for people. And I notice on Twitter some people that are definitely getting into just exactly that, kind of interpreting the data and the tech and being able to be that person that comes out to your farm and helps with those things. So would like to see a lot more of those roles, because there's a lot of tech stuff that you don't have to be good at everything on your farm. So we're really fortunate that our agronomy takes that into focus already. But I think that I'm hopeful that there's lots of good kids coming up that'll be able to do that.
Just a note on Twitter. It's going through a bit of a change over the past month or so, but there still is some good content on Twitter, and a lot of it has to do with the people on the panel here who are Twitter leaders. So Shayla, I don't know whether you yourself are on Twitter, but you mentioned your husband. So do you want to give us both of your Twitter handles, and then Carl and Rob?
Yeah, I am not going to lie. I'm in the social media realm, but I don't typically, I guess, get drawn to Twitter a whole bunch. I pop in every once in a while, but my husband likes to. He's like a one-way Twitter guy. He likes to absorb the information, but doesn't necessarily put it out there a whole bunch. But I know it's the kind of groups, like group chats and all of that really provide a lot of value there. So yeah, my Twitter handle is just my name. So it's just at Shayla Wourms for all of my social media accounts.
Okay, great. Carl, what's your handle?
It's at Carl deConinck.
Rob?
At RG Stone 1, and I'm not sure why I ended up with the 1 when I signed up, but there it is. So yeah.
There's like a million Rob Stones in the world. And you're
One
number
is a
one.
rapper, actually. So
Oh yeah. Ian, any online?
Any comments or thoughts on the feasibility of rewilding those marginal areas or potholes or less productive areas, and maybe how that ties into precision ag?
I was commenting about that while the presentation was going on, and I tagged Steve Shirtliff in the presentation this morning about that. I think that there's a lot of opportunities. Using the term rewilding, I like the term, just doing what's best with it, I guess. And the potential there is that like I said, you've got your hot spots where you're overlapping and where things build up, or if you're not using your nutrition properly in areas because of salinity and poor growth and those sorts of things. So being able to identify those areas quickly with more tools that are coming online all the time, I agree that it would be up to our choice to decide how we manage those, but there's a great degree of promise for being able to raise our field profitability. But I have to be very, very, very specific to this group and any other group that I talk to that it's the farmer's choice and decision how they go about that. And everyone's going to come to a different conclusion. And I think the role of everybody else around it is to facilitate and help with technical expertise when called upon.
Just a quick comment, I guess, on our farm. Weeds like kochia have kind of necessitated the need for two things. Just a plain rock pile, trying to get rid of that's a source of contamination of kochia that grows there, can't deal with it, it moves. And on the opposite side of that, we really are trying to leave a lot more sloughs that never do get broke, or only 1 out of 20 years or 10 years. We're trying to leave a lot more of that, just to get those natural grasses established, keep those hard to kill weeds and noxious weeds as much as we can out of our system.
All right, we've got 6 minutes and a bit left, and there's 2 things I want to finish with. This is Canola Discovery Forum, so we want to discover some research needs. So I'm going to put it to the 3 of you. Is there public research? Is there private research that needs to get done? I mean, you're doing research on your own farms all the time, but is there work that the people in this room could do to help you, in particular with regard to application of precision and smart technology? Shayla?
Yeah, I'll chime in here. I think it came up earlier today that I actually think it's a lot on the social science side. So around even the concept of which obviously the age of farmers seems to be tending upwards, but just around what it actually takes to get people to adopt something, and how we can build up the user friendliness with a lot of these technologies, because that goes for a lot of different areas of the industry, as well as communicating the science or the technology to that end person. So how do we do that in the best way? And hopefully, again, that research drives then some kind of best practices moving forward, and hopefully that helps the users, but it also helps kind of everyone along the supply chain as well, because it should help the equipment dealers, the chem suppliers, everyone. It should be a win-win there.
That's a good answer.
That's all you got?
I guess almost the next step of weed control, where even with spot spray technology, we are quickly running out of chemical options on kochia. I mean, there's a percentage now, I'm going to just guess at probably 60-70% of the land in Saskatchewan already, where in-crop herbicide in our cereals, there's probably at least 1% of the kochia, or 0.5%, that is not being controlled by that. So we've almost lost our in-crop already. There's a couple of options from before and after. So we're going to have to start thinking about that next phase of when our dominoes are falling of what chemicals we do have, even with technology. So it might come down to more physical control at some point, actually physically picking them out once we lose these options. So that needs to be thought of fairly rapidly.
I want higher yielding canola that doubles yields every 5 years and no pests in it and all of those sorts of things. But my thought here is an interest of collaboration and building greater trust between industry, farmers, researchers, and not that you distrust anybody one way or the other, but we are entering a different dynamic in agriculture now with a lot of the environmental pressures that are seem to be finding their way all to the farmer to bear the brunt. And so we need to double our efforts in order to communicate properly what is happening currently on the farm, developing better data sets, and being able to participate in the conversation when it comes to emissions reductions or fertilizer caps or whatever. I know it's not a fertilizer cap, so don't worry about it, but it's an emissions reduction target based on faulty numbers. And so we need to make better numbers. We need to be able to communicate that properly, both to our consumers and the public, the journalists that cover these things, not in ag media, because the ag media journalists do a really nice job, but we need to have some data and some numbers that get out to the national media. We need to have a better ability to communicate these things to our elected officials and their deputies and everyone else that's involved. That is going to be an important project, I think, and it's not just one single issue or one single researcher, but we need to collaborate together because it all comes back to the farm. And it starts, that's where the carbon's being sequestered, and that's where the requests are being placed. So we need to be very sure of what practices we need to be doing, and we need to be able to communicate what's currently happening. So that's my request for anybody who wants to ask.
I participated in the Grow Canada conference last week. It was online. And a very wise woman who Shayla knows quite well said, nothing about farmers without farmers, which I thought is pretty cool. And what we learned from you three is that there's a real willingness among farmers to take that next step. And at Grow Canada last week, John Stackhouse, he works for RBC, as a strategic advisor to the vice president. And he said that the US is moving forward really quickly with carrots, as we're advancing sustainability. Let's just use that word. And Stackhouse said Canada doesn't want to be the country using, what did he say, a bundle of sticks beside the country that's using a bushel of carrots. Anyway, farmers are the allies in all of this. Anyway, so I gave you two kind of cool sayings, and then we're going to close. We've got 39 seconds. We've got 10 seconds each. What is something you'd recommend the people in this room put on a Post-it and put it on their desks? A saying, a word, something to remember, something to think about every day while they're working. Any ideas?
We're missing our chance.
I'll start, and I was talking with my husband about this yesterday, and it is just be willing and ask questions. And I think that drives you to always be questioning what you're doing. And it's not to say that you can't be proud of what you're doing and all your accomplishments, whether you're in your professional life or in your farming life, wherever that fits. But it's just so that you're always driving to be a little bit better, and that your mind's always open and you're imagining and you're curious to learn more. So, and just, I don't know if that's something that's challenging with youth right now, is they're a little bit scared to ask questions, and we should never stop asking questions. It doesn't mean that you're not confident. It just means that you're caring.
Yeah, look forward with your imagination. Just keep looking at what's coming, not always what's right here.
Well, the one that I would look at, and everybody else should smile, I bet you're going to have a great day and you probably enjoy what you're doing.
Excellent. Let's give these three wonderful people a hand. All right, so we've got a half hour. 3 o'clock, we join back here for Curtis's Corner with Curtis Rempel. Coffee and snacks just outside the entrance doors. And I think that's all. Thank you very much, everybody.